We're off on a different kind of adventure today. My buddy Brandon and I are going to visit a couple of state parks and meet up with some people to show us how to enjoy an activity that you've probably got in your house right now, a camera, outdoor photography. Something doesn't cost a lot, it's something that's a lot of fun, and it's something you can bring back with you and enjoy. We are off after a different kind of trophy today here in Keystone Country. Our wall hanger won't be a 6-pound trout and it won't have antlers or anything like that. But it's going to be something that will help us remember a day in Willie Penn's woods in Keystone Country. How about it? You ready? You ready? I imagine you're ready. Today it's Pictures in the Mountains on Casey's Outdoors. Stay with us. I guess the biggest and most expensive investment you make in photography is the camera. And you can read and hear an awful lot about them. But just as important is what goes in the camera. And rarely do we think about film. What kind of film are we going to use? Let's go meet a friend of mine, Tom Grants, who really knows about film. Come on. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Hi, Casey. How are you?
Okay. My buddy Brandon and I are going to go out in the woods and see if we can get some outdoor photographs.
Okay.
Everybody tells you about cameras, and nobody tells you much about the film that goes in them. Where do I start?
Okay. The numbers that appear on the boxes, and they're making them really bold so people can relate to that speed very quick. You've got a 100, 200, 400, in some cases 1,000 and 1,600. It all relates to the speed of the film. The higher the number, the less light it requires to make a good exposure. The lower the number, the more light it needs.
Okay, so if you're shooting available light at your at the school play or at a
Indoors,
ball game or
without
something
flash.
like that, you want a high number.
Yeah, exactly. Now there are problems with that. It's not just as easy as picking a 1,600 speed film and then never using a 100. As you get faster in the film, you pick up what we know as grain. It's very apparent when you blow a picture up. You almost looks like a picture made of sand. It's a good example
I've seen
of
that phenomenon.
Exactly. As you get higher in the speed, that becomes worse. The 100 speed now, on the other end, is a very fine-grained film. Produces excellent sharpness, the best color, and also the least amount of grain. So if you can shoot 100, that's the best choice all the time, no matter what you're shooting. But then again, you can't always shoot 100. Overcast day. In the woods, when you're in a lot of trees where there's not a lot of light coming through the trees.
Deep shadows, right.
100 speed film. The problem is your shutter speed on your camera is going to be so slow at times that you're going to get vibration or movement because you can't hold it still for a slow exposure. So therefore, you would have to bump the speed of the film by going to a 2 or possibly a 400.
Okay, well, I'm going into the woods with a loopy Labrador Retriever friend of mine. We're going to have some shadow. We're probably not going to use much flash. I think I will go with the conservative approach. Take the 200 film, which will give us some shadow capability, some low light capability, plus handle itself pretty well in bright contrasty light.
Good choice.
How about half a dozen rolls of these, and then I'm going to pick up Brandon, and we're going to take you to Bedford County for Picture Perfect. It continues in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks, Tom. Quiet now. We always try to set you up with somebody on these Casey Outdoor shows who can show us what to do. Genuine, bona fide experts at things like today's subject, outdoor photography. Doesn't have to be a real complicated thing, but it's nice to find somebody who really knows what they're doing. And our guest is one of these guys who's got it by the short hairs. Tim Flanagan is a wildlife conservation officer for the state of Pennsylvania. He lives and works in these woods. When he's got some spare time, he's a great outdoor writer and photographer. Let's see if we can sneak up on him. Gee, here we are sneaking up on Tim. I thought he'd be out stalking some wildlife or doing something that's it's a flower. Hi, Tim. How you doing?
Who's your good-looking pal there?
Oh, this old guy's name is Brandon.
Hi, Brandon.
He likes the woods almost as much as you and I do.
Well, what a photo subject he'll make. Huh?
We're going to take some pictures of him if we can keep him out of the water.
Neat dog. I think he'll like the water
I think
very much.
Anyhow.
Yeah, neat dog.
Okay, you've been here. Are you through with your setup?
Yeah, I was set up on this yellow iris here using a reflector and a tripod and some long exposures trying to get this beautiful wetlands plant.
I don't know. We live in an awful special place.
We sure do.
Pennsylvania, and the subject here is how to enjoy yourself without having a whole lot of expensive equipment or special expertise. And I guess taking pictures is something that not everybody can learn to do.
It certainly is. It's very simple if you'll just apply some very simple techniques. There are some rules, and once you know them, rules of composition and lighting and exposure, they're very simple. It's just as easy as understanding how the human eye works.
And we're gonna visit Shawnee State Park and Blue Knot Park, both of which are in Bedford County. But any place in Keystone Country, probably within 15 minutes of you, there's a place where there's beautiful scenery.
Right. As a matter of fact, right out the back door of most people's homes are beautiful photographic opportunities if we just learn to see them.
Now watch this. Do you want to go for a swim? Want to play frisbee? Well, come on, let's go.
Tom, you can buy cameras from any end of the spectrum, from very expensive cameras, the Nikon F4s and so forth. I'm shooting FE2s, and I really love them, but this is basically a professional's camera. And you can spend however much you want. They come in very common or very, very inexpensive cameras. The point-and-shoots, for example, are real good all-around cameras, and they can deliver very, very good quality for very little money. I would suggest that you buy the best body and best lenses that you can afford without going into the highly professional camera. You have a setup of a Canon AE1 with 2 lenses, and I usually recommend that a person buy a good body for a camera that has features both automatic and manual, so that you can override the automatic provisions of the camera and take scenes that are very contrasty if you'd like to. But I usually recommend that they buy a medium length, a small length zoom, something like a 35 to 70. And this is a great lens that you can use for close-up people pictures. You can have a wide-angle shot, a scenic, or take a portrait of someone. And then also couple that with, later on, you may want to invest in a medium zoom lens, a 70 to 210. Some of them vary just a little bit in the magnification, but a 70 to 210 zoom, such as you have here, is just ideal. This is a great all-around outdoor camera. It just would be very, very hard to beat. The 3 major lines of cameras that provide a tremendous variety of lenses are Nikon, Canon, and Minolta. Those seem to be the top 3 right now. Of course, they're not the only manufacturers, but they have a tremendous variety of lenses. I'm sure you can get just about anything you want, and good service as well by staying with those 3 major lines of cameras. I notice you have a skylight filter on here to protect your lens, and what that does, it may cut down the light coming in just a bit, but the reason I'm sure you have that on there is to protect the main optics from being scratched. I don't use the skylight filter, and I'll tell you why. You notice how the sun is glaring off of that? Any little piece of dust.
A little flare there.
Right. Any little piece of dust picks up the light and makes it flare. And if I roll that lens hood back, you can see it flaring off of mine. The only way I could get a good photograph with that light flaring off of there is to shade that lens, physically shade it. The camera tip of the day, if you really want to increase your photography and enhance your photography 50% or 100%, put a lens hood on your lens and keep that peripheral light off there. If you can get that light off of that lens, you get a much better photograph, because we want to record on film only the light coming through the lens, not that which is bouncing around on the surface of it.
Picking out basic camera gear really isn't hard, and I'll tell you it's a whole lot easier than keeping a loopy Labrador out of the water. Old Brandon had his heart set on a duck dinner, but he hasn't quite figured out that he can't swim as well as they do. Oh, what the heck, he has a good time trying. This is the sort of thing that cameras were made for, isn't it?
Photography is just capturing light. It's like taking a catcher's mitt and catching light. That's all it is. And if you think about the camera being just like a catcher's mitt, you just aim it at the subject you want. The camera's blind. All it sees is values of light. It's just like an eye. The film back here is like the retina of our eye. And bright light like today, our pupil closes up. So we can use a small f-stop, and those settings on the lens are called f-stops, or units of light.
People are intimidated by the numbers. The bigger the number, the smaller the hole.
Right.
Simple as that.
Big number, smaller hole. The pupil on our eye opens in dim light conditions, so we have to manually open the lens in dim light conditions. When it gets bright, our pupils close down or constrict, so we have to manually close the lens.
Right.
We need to think about that. And when the light comes through that proper opening, if it's set for the right size, it's then impacts on the film after the shutter opens. And the shutter opens and closes for set periods of time. Another set of numbers on the camera, the other set of numbers you need to know. The f-stops are one and shutter speeds are the other. Most cameras, when set on automatic, and both your camera and mine we can set on automatic, and they'll do their thing. All we have to do is focus by turning the lens barrel. But by knowing these numbers, if we have a strange condition where we've got a dark subject on a light background, or vice versa, when we have those kind of problems, the automatic cameras don't work well. So we need then to understand these numbers and perhaps override them a little bit.
All right, let me interrupt and let's see if we can do a demonstration right now of that. You're watching on video. We're going to show you with some still pictures. All right, the light is behind Tim. The scene is very, very bright. His face is actually in shadow. If I believe what the camera meter tells me and shoot in the automatic position, we're going to get a picture of Tim. That'll be okay, but his face is going to be dark.
Right, the face will be very, very dark.
The camera's reading the entire scene. So let's see how this works out if we get a nice comparison. You're a little bit close there. We're in focus. All right, now we'll tell the camera to take twice the amount of light. We're going to open the hole. Make the iris a little bigger.
Open the aperture or open the f-stop.
Lower number f-stop.
Right.
All right, so we'll take the same photograph and we'll see if Tim's face is not better lit than the last time, believing what the camera.
And we hope the lens doesn't shatter when you take that
We hope
photograph.
that rigs. Now that's called backlighting, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Backlighting is excellent lighting if you use it properly, especially for wildflowers or wildlife. If you can get some backlighting on it, it makes any little hairs on a deer, the whiskers on a deer with backlight, its ears will just be rimmed with light with backlighting. Or side lighting. Direct on lighting is probably the worst.
Naturally, it's important to understand how a camera works, what goes on inside it. If you know the nuts and bolts, it'll help you take better pictures. You also need to learn the best way to hold a camera. You may have a steady hand, but nobody's perfect.
When you're a living creature, you're breathing, your heart's moving, and if you look through a lens, especially a high magnification lens, say something like a 300 millimeter or above, you can see that camera, that image moving. Now you can either use a tripod to stop that, or you can use your body as a tripod. You'll see people taking pictures like this, and the camera's out there bouncing around. And when they push the shutter release, they'll do this. They'll jerk it.
Elbows close, same way you might fire a rifle.
Bring the elbows in. You may want to rest it on a knee, rest it on your stomach, and some of us can rest it on a little more stomach than others, and place it right under the lens so that camera is sitting very solidly. And then when you squeeze that off, make sure that you're watching the image very, very carefully so that it's being very still, and then squeeze the shutter release. It should surprise you when it goes
Instead
off.
of jabbing at it.
Yeah, don't jab it, don't jerk at it or push at it. You can't make the photo better by the grip or by the amount of effort you put into the shutter release. Yeah. It's like a competitive handgun shooter. He can't push the bullet down to the target. He has to squeeze it off very carefully, very, very, just like there's an egg under there.
How to hold a camera. The principles of photography, that's the basic information. Keeping the basics in mind, we can move on to the most enjoyable part, taking pictures. This is where your creativity comes into play, where you get to be an artist. Now, there are some things you can do to enhance your photos, like turning the camera on its side. Take a vertical picture instead of a horizontal one.
I have some dramatic photographs that are dramatic because I turned the camera the opposite direction. 35 millimeter film is longer than it is tall. So when you shoot a horizontal, holding the camera in this plane is a horizontal plane, your photograph is actually longer than it is tall. And if you've got a tree or a wildflower, just some things lend themselves to vertical photography more so than horizontal. Take a white-tailed deer, for instance. A white-tailed deer standing sideways, looking ahead or looking at you to the side, he's a horizontal photograph.
Certainly.
Here's his long back and his head sticking up. But when he turns directly at you, and there he is with his neck stretched up and his antlers above, then he's a vertical. Then you want to turn that camera so that your film plane is longer vertically. The same with a wildflower or a tree or a person. A person standing, really that's a vertical shot. There's another thing called the rule of thirds. For some reason, our eyes like to see things in a third of a photograph. You take the the rectangular aperture or the rectangular form of your photograph and place the subject not dead center. It's boring there, but place it off to the somewhere in a third of that. It doesn't matter just where that third is. If you've got a dog pointing a bird and you've got a horizontal plane, you want that bird over to one third and the dog in the rest of the photograph, so that you're looking mainly to 1/3 of that photograph. We also like things in groups of threes. I do a lot of wildflower photography, and I have some wildflower photographs that are boring because there are 2 flowers hanging there. The most beautiful ones are where there are at least 3, especially 3, or odd number, 3 or 5 little blossoms hanging in the photograph.
Well, Brandon and I learned a lot from talking with Tim. We figured it was about time to try our hands, or our paws, at photography. Since we all had such a wonderful time at Shawnee State Park, we thought we'd head for another park in Bedford County, Blue Knob State Park. It's a beautiful place, and you'll see what we found at Blue Knob when we come back with more of Casey Outdoors.
When we were at Shawnee Park, Tim, you laid down some principles. We got concepts, things like depth of field and shutter speed and how to view a scene. I think what I'd like to do is find something pretty here at Blue Knob. We're on the road along the Blue Knob State Park. Find a scene and shoot it as many different ways as we can to maybe illustrate the things you're talking about.
Well, that's pretty.
All right, I'm looking right here. In the foreground, we got the dead tree stump, the stream, and a little bit of white water coming out of the stream. There is a tree hanging over the stream to maybe frame it on the left.
Yes.
And an old bare board house in the background that looks like it has some possibilities.
It's got some character to it. This is great. Let's start with a wide angle shot of that and then work in with various focal length lenses and see what effect we get with different lenses.
All right.
By shooting the same scene from the same angle but with different focal lengths or magnification by the lenses, we came up with several very different pictures. The first photo was pretty wide. We set the lens for a focal length of 35 millimeters, and that kept a lot in the picture. The stream, the trees, the house, even some sky. Now, by setting the focal length of the lens at 50 millimeters, we brought the scene a little bit closer. We cut out some of the surroundings, but we could see the house a little bit better. A focal length of 70 millimeters made the house seem even closer. We saw less of the stream and noticed none of the sky. By using a focal length of 100 millimeters, we made the house even bigger in the shot. And at a setting of 135 millimeters, the house really filled the picture.
All right, here's a different scene. I picked the last point of view. You pick one here.
All right, this is beautiful, this old house, and I think we can get some good film right here. If I can get the legs set up in this tripod. There we go. I like this in a vertical because of the big maple tree here and this little sapling, and I would suggest a little shorter focal length so that we can get a little more in the photograph. We've got some water moving here in the foreground.
Okay, so we've taken the same subject from 2 different areas, a bunch of different focal lengths. We've got a couple of points to make here. Let's try a third area. And let's also make the point that, here, I'll get the tripod here. Let's also make the point that an awful lot of Sunday photographers are a little too spare with the film.
That's right.
Take lots of pictures when you go out.
Film is the cheapest. That's the cheapest thing. And when you're out there and you have a nice subject, it's going to change. These flowers that are here today won't be here in a few more days. So the subject's going to change totally, the foliage is going to change, and the light condition changes by the minute.
We may not get a trophy picture today, but we will have taken enough pictures to give ourselves a chance at getting a wall hanger.
Absolutely correct. From this point of view, we can use either a horizontal or a vertical format. We can have a long, skinny horizontal, including all the outbuildings here, or we can turn the camera on its side and shoot a very tight vertical and have the stream leading our eye up to it, framing it with the apple trees on the left and the sycamore on the right.
By trying different angles and turning your camera on its side sometimes, you can really take some nice pictures. Everybody can do it. But there are other things you can try too, like experimenting with shutter speed. Shutter speed affects the way your camera photographs motion.
We talked earlier about the camera being catching light, acting like a catcher's mitt. And when you're photographing a moving subject and it comes in and hits the film, if that subject's moving and the shutter's open a long time, it smears the image on the film, so you get a blurred image.
Right.
If you've got a very quick shutter, it just catches a quick shot of that and it stops the image. So at 2/50th of a second, we're going to stop this water real quick. It's going to look like it's frozen. And
now we go to
let's
slower shutter speed.
Let's go to a much slower shutter speed, and we'll see that the water will blur.
Name it.
Let's try 30th of a second.
All right. Let's shoot some real slow ones.
Let's go to about 1/4 of a second.
All right, 1/4 of a second.
We can even go slower than that. Let's go to a full second if you have it there.
I got a full second.
Let's give it a full second.
I don't know that we may overexpose it a little bit, but we'll get the idea of the movement.
Very good.
It's a long time.
A long shutter speed, right.
So we will see then the effects of motion, and as you say, the length of time the shutter is open. You can get the same effect shooting the kids running in the backyard.
Right.
You want the child to be a blur a little bit, use a slow shutter speed. Or
yeah, a child running could probably be, or a child walking could be stopped at 1/25th of a second. If they're running, you'd have to go to 2/50th.
Right.
If you've got a flying duck or a flying pheasant, you'll need 500th of a second.
Well, Tim sure taught us a lot at Blue Knob, and Brandon and I had a great time learning. Unfortunately, the time had come to part company.
Well, Tim, thanks again for the visit. Thank you very much for the photography tips and the visit to Shawnee and the Blue Knob State Park. Had a good time.
Well, you're certainly welcome. It was a pleasure for me. I really enjoyed it. And let's impress upon the viewers that photography is available to anyone. With the modern films and cameras, it's easy for anyone to get good photographs.
I think all of our outdoor sports people sometimes get intimidated by, I think you need a lot of equipment or a lot of expertise or athletic ability, and it's not that way. We're blessed living in a place where you can have a good day with a silly old dog and 10 minutes in the woods. Huh?
I couldn't agree with you more.
All that's left is for his eminent high loopiness and me to go find out how we made out. We'll pick up some prints at the photo factory. If we got a wall hanger, we'll hang it. If we didn't, it's a great excuse to come back.
Hey,
we'll
try again.
Come back with you in just a moment. What do you think, dummy? Yeah, what do you think? Huh? Well, that's our latest trip to the Keystone Country Outdoors. Brandon and I had a heck of a good time and hope you did too. We got some nice pictures. I don't know if we got any contest winners or anything to make the cover of National Geographic, but that's not the point of this. What we try to do today is get you interested in using that camera for something other than the obligatory Christmas and birthday and christening and bar mitzvah shots. So get out and enjoy our Keystone Country Outdoors. I think you'll enjoy it more if you enjoy it through a viewfinder of a camera. I'll see you in the woods or along the stream, and I'll see you next time on Casey's Outdoors. Where's the bunny? Where's the bunny? Get the bunny.